Everybody, it's Linda again, and I'm here today with Tom T. Moore. I told you guys before he'd be coming back, and I apologize, Tom. I've been running around like a chicken. I didn't even send him the link till today, and I thought it was tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
He called me. I'm like, "Hey, how's it going? So what's our day tomorrow?" He said, "No, it's today." I'm so sorry. So anyway, as you know, Tom is about the gentle way. He's got some books, volume one, two, and three, The Gentle Way with Pets, First Contact, Conversations with an ET, Atlantis and Lemuria, the Lost Continents Revealed. Very good books, you guys. I highly recommend. If you go to his website, thegentlewaybook.com, you can order books, right?
Yep. Well, no, not on the website, Amazon
Amazon,
or
okay.
what have you.
Even if they just
Um,
spelt your name, they'd be able to see your links.
and I've got another book coming out in mid 2025. Um, it's called My Conversations with Gaia, the Soul of the Earth.
That's great. How have you been in Texas, by the way?
Pretty good. We got, I think, 7/10 of an inch of rain between last night and this morning. So,
Yeah, they're talking about bad weather in Texas today. Not where you
well, yeah, a couple of little places lost limbs and trees, kind of stuff, and
are. Okay.
but ours was just kind of windy and rainy, and the dogs were hiding out. So,
Uh, Speaking of dogs, I might have to put this on pause just briefly but it won't affect you guys. But if you hear me tell them I gotta go and all of a sudden I'm back, it's because Lulu and Jack are getting their baths today and cuts, and I have to switch dogs. I'm not doing it. The groomer is here. Okay, so you gave me some subjects to cover, and I'm very interested in this one. You agreed with Sterling on overlapping lives,
yes.
and
Yeah,
explain that.
that confused people the last time that we talked, because I said, we have overlapping lives, especially in the 20th and probably going into the 21st century, because um, our population maxed out at about 7 billion. And so I was told, and I didn't understand this comment when they first told me, they said, it was all hands on deck, and basically it meant that um, not only were all souls having that are involved in the Earth experiment having lives, but they're having multiple lives in the 20th century. Now, I call them, or somehow they got named overlapping lives because some of them are going on at the same time as other lives, but they're they're not they weren't started at the same time. To give you one example, 44 lives from now, I recently found out that I'm a woman working in the Pentagon, and I'm going to be um, one of the main advisors of the President of the United States starting around 2032 or 3. And I will never meet her, but that's a future life for me. It just so happens that it's going on at the same time as my life. So
Okay.
all of these lives that we're having, and I've had a number in the 20th century, but they're overlapping because some, as an example, I was a woman. I recently found out that was advising during World War II. I was living in England and I was advising the Churchill and military war rooms because I was able to tell them how large the German units were, where they were moving to, that type of stuff. So I quickly graduated from the typing pool and I wound up as an officer of the English Army and married a major. And then after World War II, we retired to a quiet English village because both of us were suffering from what was called at that time war nerves. It was a highly stressful job. So again, it was going on at the same time I was a kid, later on.
Wow. So what
So anyway,
Sterling said about overlapping lives does exist.
pardon?
So he talked about overlapping lives as far as predictions is concerned.
Oh, okay.
So one of the reasons, I don't know, he was saying that the reason one of his prophecies may not, it still could come true, may not
Yeah.
have come true is because of that displacement of overlapping lives. I can imagine it's confusing when you're trying to pick up on stuff.
Yeah, but again, and I'll sort of harp on that, during our talk today. It's again something else that you can find out about if you start learning to meditate. And it's just, when I say this meditation, it's not, going, out into the ethers. It's simply breathing in through your nose, holding it for 5, breathing out through your mouth, holding it for 5, doing that a few times and relaxing yourself and choosing a time of the day when you have absolutely no interruptions and you're not thinking about what you're going to do at work or what you're going to cook that night or
Yeah,
whatever the normal things that we all go through um, in our daily lives. You've got to have a real quiet period, but you could start asking all of these questions, and there's so many things you can learn about yourself and about your lives on Earth, and it just takes a little practice. And every time when I first started out doing this, every time I'd say, "Well, Theo, that's my guardian angel, am I getting better at this?" And he'd say, "Practice, practice, 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 practice." He said that so many times, I finally gave up and just stopped asking because that's what it takes. It's just practice.
right. How long have you been practicing now?
Well, I started learning to do this in 2000, and the first time I did this was 2005 at a Dick Sutphen um, uh, seminar in Sedona, and that's when I first communicated with another member of my soul group, whose name at that time he was an Indian shaman by the name of Reveals the Mysteries, and later he turned out to be Antura, my um, my brother on another planet that I communicate with all the time.
I remember that name.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, Antura was introduced to me in 2008, and I've been communicating with him ever since. He's an ET and an amphibian to boot, but uh, he's we're the same soul group. So,
Wow, that's so interesting. Can I ask you real quick? It's not on the list here, but um, uh, what do you call it when you're sitting in one place and you can see things happening in another place? What is that called?
oh, gosh, is that far sight?
Something
Is that
like
what?
that, where you can be someplace and hear the person's or feel the person's emotions, or but they
That's not
use some.
exactly foresight. Foresight, of course, is another. All of these things are telepathic. I mean,
Yes,
they have so many different names: clairvoyant, clairaudience, uh, uh, you know, a uh, a channel, and so forth. They're all the same thing. All of these uh, uh, go through the pineal gland in the back of your heads, which acts as an antenna for all types of telepathic thoughts and emotions and images and so on. So it all goes through there. It's just kind of learning to open it up a little by little so that you can do
Right.
more and more.
Hold on 1 second. So we were going to talk about soul contracts.
Okay. But before we get off meditations for a second, if you could,
Okay.
one of the things that I found is so neat about doing meditations is that if you're a channel, typically a channel will channel one being or maybe two or three,
Yeah.
but not a host. So as an example, here was my last uh yeah, it took like 2 hours. Uh I was getting really tired at the time. But I communicated with Gaia, with Mouse Soul, with Jesus, which we can get into for a
Oh, I
second.
can't wait. I love that's my favorite subject.
Oh, okay. Theo, my guardian angel, Spider Soul, uh, the king and queen of the fairies, and Antura, and also the Palladian, who runs a team that meets with scientists in 6 different countries who are doing this back engineering of ET crash craft, and they all think they're the only ones the Palladians were meeting with. And they're going to be really surprised someday when they find out that there's 5 other countries that are doing exactly the same thing and getting exactly the same amount of information so nobody gets ahead of the other. So
Right, right, right.
anyway, so that was like 8, in one session. So you can jump around and communicate with dog soul, cat soul, if you want to ask questions about your cat or your dog. Um, they're just such a wide range that you
Well,
can
and the
do
releasing and being in the meditative state gives you that you don't always have to go to someone else to get that information. You could do it yourself.
exactly. And I preach this to all the readers of my free weekly newsletter, which you can find at www.thegentlewaybook.com. And probably someday in the future, uh, there won't be any more questions for me to
Wouldn't that be
ask.
nice?
They'll all do it themselves. But
Yeah,
but that's in the future, and until then, I will do my very best to get the best answers I possibly can for them.
that's
So
great. Thank you for all the work.
and and they can sign up on the very first page of the website. There's a little box, fill in your email and your
And
name.
when you sign up, you can ask questions.
Uh, yes, and you can. So I'm open, and I want people to uh, have the best understanding, the best lives they can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Anyway,
hold on 1 second. So can we talk about soul contracts?
yes, or Jesus, whichever one you want.
Well, I can't wait for Jesus, but I'm going down the list.
Okay.
So let's talk about soul contracts, how they can change according to our soul's wishes, but still keep the contract for a later time. Now that's interesting.
Okay. So I said, why did it seem every telepath had Harris winning? What happened? Our speculation was that we dropped to a lower timeline. And the answer I got from Gaia was certainly it was partly due to your own recognition that would be the most gentle path. But this path also has a lot of learning and will result eventually in the raising of all your vibrational levels. Just as you guessed from the way I answered you before, a large number of first, second, and early third young souls, these were quadrants,
Yeah,
young souls, chose what appears to them as a strong leader and who will help them in their daily lives. That was the greatest promise they latched onto. You can call it smoke and mirrors, since the tariffs will make things harder and will limit what they can buy. Again, all lessons to be learned by these younger souls. had the election take place in, say, 10 years or more in the future, there would have been a different outcome. You did not drop down to a lower timeline. You, as a nation, simply chose a path with higher learning and lessons. We can only give you the probabilities. Your souls decided to choose a path with more lessons to be learned. Now, with that, I also ask a question. Um, well, like I was told that uh, this soul contract was chosen over 1 million years ago, okay, by my soul. And so I was saying, well, you say that on one hand, but on the other hand, suddenly, all of these young souls are getting uh, are getting positions in government. And so I was told, yes, that's true. Had it gone the other way, it would their lives or their positions would have been in later in their lives, maybe another 8 years or what have you. And but that didn't happen. Now they're being thrust into making choices, and some of them will go okay, and some of them will not go very well.
But that's the soul contract,
Yep,
choices.
choices. And so it Gaia says we have to allow the souls to have free
Yeah, free will is very
choice.
important.
Okay,
Yeah.
and that free choice uh, has uh, has consequences. And if you choose a path that looks fine but isn't, then you have to live with it and you have to learn. But overall, we will be the better for it in the long run. We'll see.
Okay. So, well, that's okay. So, but still keep the contract for a later time.
Pardon?
You said, but still, this you can change according to your soul's wishes, but still keep the contract for a later time.
Yes. So again, had the Democrats won, all of these Republican people that were going to have positions in government, it would have delayed them on that particular soul path until 4 years or 8 years or whatever in the future.
The number of beings you can communicate with during meditation.
Well, as we kind of discussed, I mean, it's almost as many as you can hold up to communicate with. Because when I'm in these meditations, excuse me, I simply say, now I want to speak to Mouso, or now I want to speak to Antura. That's all you have to say. And immediately they're there.
Okay. You know what? I was just thinking before I got interrupted with the dogs. What were we talking about? I was talking about being able to vision someplace where you're in one place and you can vision the other place. What is that called?
And the best I could come up with was foresight, but
There's a word for it because you know the CIA used it all the time. There was
that's foresight, you
well,
know.
no, there's another word they used though.
Okay.
It was a show about ETs on
Mhm.
the MGM Plus show. Very interesting show. And they called it something, but it wasn't Farsight. It's
Okay.
where they actually drew the place. They can draw what they see.
That's it.
And but there's a word for it. It might come to me before we close this out.
Okay.
So but anyway, what I was going to say is the CIA hired two of the top people that could do this. And there was a plane that belonged to Russia that a guy was going to give to the United States. And then he said, nah, I better not because I'll be chased after the KGB for the rest of my life. So he acted like something went wrong with the plane and he parachuted out. and the plane ran until it ran out of gas, and it landed in a jungle, I think in Africa.
No.
And do you know those two people were able to get within 3 miles of where it was located? And the United
Mm.
States was able to go in and get all the reconnaissance that they needed from that plane.
Oh,
So that's interesting. You can see things if you, and you know, the CIA tries to act like they don't believe in that. They believe in it.
well, and also uh, keep in mind, there have been uh, uh, people in the CIA that interview ETs that have crashed, and
Heard that, yeah.
and in fact, um, just recently, one was proven to be real and not some fake, and uh, and the CIA was using two telepaths to communicate with this being they were questioning, who was slowly dying, and uh, uh, and I put this in one of my newsletters recently that I asked, was this real? And was told, yes, yes, it was. But the telepaths were not perfect in what they received. And they said, the enter said, that's because they're human. Nobody's perfect as far as humans go that are doing this telepathy. So they didn't quite get all of what the being was trying to tell them.
So okay, but because they had a hard time with telepathy.
Yeah, I mean, they were good telepaths, but as I put in my newsletter every time, yeah, I'm told I was told by Theo that nobody is perfect that does this work, and we'll I list myself as somewhere in the 80 or 90% percentile, as best I can figure from you know over 30,000 questions I've asked in a meditative state. So um, that's but nobody is perfect, and that included Edgar Casey.
Yeah,
So
and Notre Dame.
and yes, and Nostradamus, yes. So
Okay, so Jesus, just ask what happened to family in France.
what happened to what?
Jesus' family in France.
Oh, okay. So I had a couple of questions for Jesus. I had one lady, one of my readers that asked, and I haven't put this in the newsletter yet, but it'll be pretty quick, um, that wanted to know if he really was married to Mary Magdalene, because she got that he was married to a Mary, but not Mary Magdalene. So that was the first question I asked. And Jesus told me that that yes, he was married to Mary Magdalene. She was higher in her studies in that life, and so he helped her along with her studies as they went along. Then the other question I asked was, which I just happened to think of to ask, was what happened to their four children? Because when they finally um, took that boat to and landed in France, what happened to the four children? And I was told that all of them stayed very close for a while, but eventually two of the boys moved to the east and joined uh, other two other communities of Jews that in somewhere to the east of France. That could have been Germany, Italy, wherever.
Wow.
Again, these are things you can ask.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Guess what? You can talk to Jesus. Guess what? You can talk to Creator. Creator tells me one day in the future, every single person on earth will communicate with him because he can have, and I use the male form because that's what everybody thinks. Um, uh, that he can have trillions of communications going on all at the same time.
Wow. So, I remember the word remote viewing.
Okay. Yeah.
Remote viewing. That's what it's called.
Very good.
CIA back in the 50s and stuff used a lot of professional remote viewers.
Okay.
And they really believed in them because it was uncanny what they could see and draw
Exactly.
up.
And it's probably still going on, although
Oh, sure
naturally
it
they
is.
would claim that it's not.
No, and they just like they claim, nah, we're not really into ET. So heck, yeah, they are.
Yeah. And one of the things, you know, if anyone gets a chance, I'm going to post it in my next newsletter, the link to the congressional hearing on UAPs/UFOs,
You
where they
just
have,
put that as the next question. ETs and UFOs, congressional hearing,
yeah,
moving the needle.
yep. And there were four witnesses, Lou Elizondo, who headed the office that investigated these things, and the admiral uh, who was the head of meteorology for the whole Navy was interviewed. So they had some pretty interesting people, and the hearing only lasted 2 hours and 15 minutes. Basically, that what they do is each of the congressmen has a 5 minute opening statement. Then they have the witnesses have a 5 minute opening statement. And then they go back to the congressman, and each congressman had 5 minutes to ask specific questions of whichever witness they wanted to ask questions of. So it moved really fast and should be interesting to anybody that has any doubts about what the United States is doing about investigations of UFOs and ETs and these.
But it is, we can watch it. It's taped.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I'll have the link, but you can go to YouTube and type in congressional hearing UAPs or whatever,
Okay.
and you'll find
And
it.
what fascinates me are the ones that live underwater too.
Yeah, and they talk about that. Um, so there's, and that's something else I just asked about, not so much underwater, although I have in the past. Someone asked me about a base in the Himalayas, and I was told that yes, there's a base in the Himalayas of ETs and about 100 on the base. And I also asked about the moon base, and that was I watched a interview on Dr. Greer's Disclosure Project files. They've been assembling all these files, and so I asked some questions, and I was told that this moon base actually at one point there were 2 to 3,000 ETs manning that base, doing studies of these four negative energies, not only of Earth but the whole solar system that's in these four negative energies. Now they just have a skeleton staff of, like 100 or something. So, but it was a, a large base, still, I guess, is. And this guy that Dr. Greer had on said that when he was uh, uh, in analyzing photos that they would take, um, that there were these towers that were half a mile tall, and I asked about what they were used for, and they were gathering information. So there's, but the guy that was in charge of these photos said that he had to airbrush out the uh, the base every time they had a photo of it so that the public wouldn't see it.
Wow. That's interesting. But they were negative?
Hmm?
You said negative?
The four negative energies. We all are living in four negative energies. So as an example, and I think I've mentioned this once before, um, Antura ship, which is only 50 miles above us, um, is is huge. It's 3 miles wide and 20 stories tall with 11 decks. Now, now that's on the outside in the four negative energies. For whatever reason, on the inside, it's it's in the 10 positive energies and it's 15 miles wide. And there are actually two decks where there's open spaces and that are 12 miles long that are open because they have some bird beings and other beings that can fly, and that gives them a chance to exercise. So they can fly this 12 miles inside the ship.
Wow. Wow. Can I ask you something? We've never discussed this before. Did
Okay.
you know those hikers that went up in Russia, those young Russian people, and they were all found dead, somebody with their tongue cut out? Do you
Yeah.
remember that story? I think
Yeah. A
Josh
long time
gave
ago.
went up there. Did you ever
Gosh,
ask your people about that? What that
yeah,
was?
I did. And it's been so long that I'm not sure if I can remember too much about it. It was something about them coming on, finding these beings and there was a fight or something. I'm
As
sorry.
their
But
tents were ripped open.
yeah, it's just been too long. Sorry.
And also there was radioactive when they used those things that was radioactive.
Hmm.
But what kind of beings would do that to kill people like that?
Don't know. Again, I may have asked the questions then, but that was probably 5 or 6 years ago. I hardly remember the questions I
Oh,
asked last month.
I know you're like me. Yeah. So, my
So,
friend, is there anything else you want to add, or is there anything
um,
exciting happening besides your book
I'll
coming out?
I'll throw in uh, if any of your listeners knows a Republican congressman, I would love to talk to them to see if I could get them interested in my Guns for Groceries.
Oh,
I had Democratic congressmen interested in pushing for this, but they said that because the committee was ruled by Republicans, they would have to wait till the election to see if things would change so it would be a Democrat running it. And of course, that has not happened. And so that means we need to find a Republican that wants to reduce gun violence and would take hold of this.
your
And
congressman where you live isn't a Republican?
oh yes,
Yeah, you can't write them.
he is. He proudly states on his bio that he's a longtime member of the NRA.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah. And then you said your book next month or December,
don't
middle of,
know, June or July or who
oh,
knows.
okay. But you got
Yeah,
that going. You were working on it, but you didn't have
yeah.
anything in
I
stone.
signed the contract about a month ago or so, and they're even going to take it um, uh, to Frankfurt for the Frankfurt Book Fair. So should get some foreign sales out of it too.
Awesome, awesome. All right, my friend. Well, thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me and squeezing me in this week.
Don't you feel it's so terrible because I am so overwhelmed sometimes. I feel I make the people who are supposed to come on feel guilty, and really, you didn't do anything wrong. We made the appointment, but it's me who's rushing like a chicken with my head cut off.
Well, I hope I noticed that you know, your number of people keep growing even with a couple of setbacks here and there.
I know, I can't believe it. It's almost up 95,000. I'll be at 100 before you know it.
Yeah.
And I am not worthy, I'll tell you. People are just so kind. People are just, and I'm getting, there's one video I did, I got 8,000 comments.
Yeah.
8,000 comments. The last one I did is over 2,000 right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw one that was like 28 or 900 and that was only like one day ago or something.
Yeah, yeah.
So
It's an honor. I'll tell you that right now. I'm really enjoying it. So you see why I'm not going to do readings anymore.
yeah,
I'll be
it'll
giving
be
away
interesting
free
to
30
see.
minute readings.
It'll be interesting to see the comments we get.
Yeah. Well, I don't read the comments. I pay people to read them for me. So anything negative I won't keep, but you probably go back and read them, right?
I try and go back and, you know, if somebody has a question like the last time where there was confusion about the overlapping lives, I tried to answer that in the comments for the people.
Okay. All right, honey. Well, you take care. We're
Sure.
getting ready to have a pretty good storm coming up in a week. Within
Oh,
the week, it's coming, Washington, Oregon. They're thinking maybe up to 24 inches of rain, and a lot of snow. And
oh, up
we
there, but not for you.
yeah, for me, where hitting right where Napa is and everything.
Oh, you need it.
It's a big front coming in that might just sit here and rain for 2 days straight. So fingers crossed that we can handle it.
Sure.
So, all right, you guys, thank you for watching, and we'll catch you on
Thank
the other
you.
side. Cheers.